very pleased to welcome in Austin Carlson, Carlson Cards. Austin, welcome back, at least temporarily, to the podcasting space. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. I know we were just chatting. It's been a little busy over at my household. Sounds like same for you with work and everything. So it's good to be on. Fun to nice. Just hop on, talk cards for 20, 30 minutes here. I'm really looking forward to it. It's been a while since I've talked on like a podcast, like you mentioned, for sure.
So your podcast, Carlson Cards, has been, we'll call it on hiatus since early mid-December. What have you been up to in the collecting space since then?
Yeah. So personally, we had a baby, which is obviously why I put the podcast on a hiatus. Not sure what world I can get back to the podcast. We'll see, hopefully, but I know I give up some time with the baby and stuff. So maybe at some point in the future, but for now, just putting that on the back burner. Cards wise, it's really fluctuated. I'm back at work now from maternity leave. So I'd say now that I'm back at work, it's been a lot of like buying and looking at my cards and selling cards and maybe less time spent watching YouTube or Instagram, that sort of thing. But ultimately, I always feel like what I'm doing at the end of the day doesn't change. I'm still buying cards I want to buy. I'm still checking save searches 5-6 times a day, probably more. Who am I kidding, really? But yeah, I'd say generally things have stayed the same. I just try to prevent myself from burning out. That's a big thing because I know my hobbies outside of cards, I sometimes get too into it and then I can tell I'm too busy. I should take a step back and I don't, and then I kind of burn out. But I feel like with cards, I've done a good job of just figuring out what are my like key things I really like doing and what can kind of maybe take a back burner for a few days or weeks, just depending on how life's going.
So speaking of buying and selling cards, the reason that I was excited to talk to you right now is about a year ago at this time, as we were ramping up for National 2023 in Chicago, I noticed that some of the comments that you were making on Instagram were some of the things that I was noticing in my own collecting space, where at the time I was saving money, getting ready for the National. I wanted to have this nice big purse to bring with me. And then something started happening in terms of story sales that were appearing on Instagram and cards that were appearing on eBay, in which it appeared deals started happening and cards started appearing. And I made a mental note that about a year from now, meaning now, 2024, I would remember this period of time. But thinking back to this period of time last year in the hobby space, what do you remember? What did you see happening in terms of the cards that you like to collect and you were looking for? What was going on at this point?
Yeah, great topic. I'm excited to talk about this. And for context, I'm not going to the National this year. So this is like the next 6 to 8 weeks and slightly after the National, I think for me are going to be where I'm going to be buying probably 70-80% of the cards I'll buy for the whole year. That's just the way I'm looking at it, depending on what pops up, right? You never know what's going to pop up. But for those of you that don't know me, I collect football cards mostly from the late 90s, I'd say like 98 onwards up until about 2015. So I really like just players. I'm 26, so these are the players that I grew up watching, like later career Peyton Manning, Randy Moss, those sort of guys, and then in between Kelvin Johnson, Marshawn Lynch, just all these players that I really like and remember fondly. That's who I focus on collecting here. And so what I noticed last year before the National, and it was going to be my first National, was I put together a big list of hey, here's the sets and the players, and some were very specific cards that I was looking for. And I was so surprised because, on my list, it was like, if I go to the National and I find 1 or 2 of these, that'll be awesome. But it turns out I was finding 3, 4, 5 cards pop up on eBay, on Instagram, story sales, well before the show even started. So it was very interesting. And like, I feel like what I was seeing was a lot of people, for whatever reason, I think some of it was saving for the National. I got that feedback sometimes. It's like, why are you selling this? Like, kind of curious. And, saving for the National, or alternatively, and this is something that I never thought through until I was prepping for this episode, I think what you see a lot is like a domino effect. Like one person is saving for the National, they will sell a big card or 2 or 3. Me or somebody else might buy one of those cards. Then we go and sell some cards to pay for that one. And then all of a sudden, I think you're seeing these cards that never leave hands. All of a sudden, they're up for grabs. You can, actually add a card that you didn't think you could. I think, for instance, I just was trying to think of an example of this. I'm sure Drake's PC on Instagram. He's a big Peyton Manning collector, wrestling, stuff like that. I know he just bought a very, very large Peyton Manning. It was the Logo Man out of Ultimate Collection, I think. And so he picked that up. And then all of a sudden now you're seeing, just because I pay attention, he posts on his stories, like some really nice Peyton Manning and Drew Brees cards popping up that I'm at least watching. I might not be buying, but I'm at least watching. And it's just interesting because then on the flip side, I'm seeing people I know who bought some of them and they're selling other cards. So it's like, I just feel like now is the time where these cards finally move hands. Whereas up until this point, at least in the Midwest here, I think we're just sitting in the winter enjoying our cards, looking at them, not really thinking of selling them until there's a reason. And then, now you're kind of seeing that. So that's, I would say, similarly to last year, I'm starting to see that now. And I'm cautiously optimistic that I'll get a chance at some really nice cards over the next couple months still again.
So I want to talk about your thought process here in 24, but I don't want to leave 23 yet.
Sure.
Was there any hesitation? I mean, I don't want to plant any sort of point of view in your head, but what was your thought process like in 23 as you had your strategy for what national would be, and you've got your pool of funds and you've got your trip planned? And I remember you were going to go with some family.
Yeah.
What was your thought process like ahead of national when these cards start to appear? Was there any hesitation because it was going to disrupt your plans, or was it, yeah, I want these cards anyway, so I might as well strike now? How did you deliberate?
Yeah, I think the biggest help to me was I knew they were not purchases that were impromptu or like emotional. They were cards I had. I think what I would highly recommend if you're listening, make a list or I've seen people do it in like a pyramid structure of like, what are you looking for if you were to go to the national, or if you are anyway? And then you can start to check stuff off on that list maybe prior, because some of the cards I bought were quite expensive, and they were cards I had, for instance, there's one that I remember very fondly and I still have is the 98 Bowman's Best Atomic Refractor Peyton Manning rookie. It's the best performers there out of 50. They don't pop up really, right? So I had one I was watching that ended as the same day I was supposed to arrive at the National. It was ending on eBay. So for instance, a card like that, normally maybe a person like myself would get to the show and think, okay, I have X amount of money available here. If I need to go to the bank, I have a little more. I'm about to use some of that bank money if I go, buy this card. And I think because of the fact I knew that was towards the very top of what I was looking for and reasonably hoping to find at the show, it made it a lot easier being prepared in that way. Because I think if I didn't have a list made, I might look at a card like that and think, well, there goes 20, 30, 40% of what I was hoping to spend at the whole show, ideally, if I found something. But then knowing, again, I feel like part of me was thinking as well, I'm going to bid what I would have paid at the National happily, very happily. If I win, which I did, that's great, because I really don't think I'd find it for that price there to begin with, which, again, for those who go to the National, it's not always the easiest to find really good prices. You might find the cards you want, but the prices might not be there. So I think that's part of it, is just knowing that I had this list. I knew I wanted to get these cards, and the fact that it was there, it made me know I wasn't being emotional like I do sometimes, where you buy a card and then a couple months later, you're like, I don't know why this is my PC box. Like I've seen 3-4 others pop up, but this was a very deliberate card. So I think that really, really helped, I would say, for sure.
I felt such relief last year seeing some of your posts on Instagram, because it affirmed what I was seeing as well. A card popped up last June that I thought was unattainable, and I was saving my funds. And I put a note on Instagram saying, hey, I was going to my first national also, and put it out there for the community to say, do I sacrifice part of my national experience potentially by spending what ended up being about 70% of what I had saved for this one card? Or do I just save it and go and have fun at national? And someone wrote back and said, get the card now, because the national is essentially eBay, as if somebody took all the search engines and all the restrictions and capacities off of it and just threw all the cards up in the air, and you never know what you're going to find. Just grab the card now. And I did, and I was really glad that I did that. And it didn't really impact my my national experience whatsoever.
Did you feel like you were able to relax more? Like that's what I felt after, and I didn't mention this, but when I knew in the back of my mind I had some of these things checked off, I was less about like, I got to sprint the room, I got to get every table. It was more about, oh, hey, I know you, how's it going? Like you start to see people that you are friends with, or I felt like I had more opportunity to make plans with people versus if I was really, really just all in on the cards. Did you feel that as well?
Not last year, because last year I still didn't know what to expect. But it has me more relaxed this year, in the respect of, if I find a card ahead of time that's been on my watch list for some time and is genuinely scarce and it pops up, I'm just going to grab it, because I know now what to expect going to national, which is going to be seeing people I want to see, walking around with people who I especially, walking around with a friend and just enjoying the cards. And if something happens to pop up, because it is one step above from being random, then that's just playing with house money at that point.
Yep. Yep.
So now in the 6 to 8 weeks ahead of National, I'm enjoying eBay more. I've got my watch list more curated. It's longer than it's ever been. And, yesterday on Instagram, I noticed ahead of our discussion, 4 separate story sales popped up. And usually I see 1 or 2 a week that are coming through. And this was 4 in one day. I thought, we're here, right? The on-ramp has begun. And people are trying to get ahead of the prices dipping in June, which they will. Not that I want to consider myself someone who is going to be giving buying advice to anybody, but I thought, this is it. This is the beginning. It's 4 in one day, one after the next, after the next, after the next. I think that we're already starting to see this year what you and I noticed happening last year.
Yeah, 100%. And I've noticed too, I don't know about you, but like specifically eBay auctions up until this point, I felt like I was getting discouraged. I was putting bids in that I felt were over what the card's worth, and I wasn't winning them by quite a bit. And so then now I feel like, especially the last couple of weeks, it's like, oh, pleasantly surprised. This is back to how I remember it fondly, being eBay, where, you might lose a card or two because there's one other person who's really wants it, but you're not getting outbid by 2 or 3 people. It might just be one person, or you're winning it much less than you thought. And I don't know, again, if that's partly national, partly people are going on vacations. I know I just got back from a vacation. I wasn't checking eBay much. I feel like there's a lot more going on nowadays, or at this point in the year, where I think online buying becomes more enjoyable for myself. I'm really not a fan of the, how do you say, like, I see an auction, I'm going to die on this hill for this card, unless it's like the one that I'm really looking for. So I try to just be smart and get value purchases. I know I have so many interests. I can't buy everything. That's part of it too.
Sure. So last question in 23, then we're jumping back into the present. Just briefly, what was National like for you last year, having already acquired some cards ahead of time? You're with family, you're walking around. What was the experience like?
So it was really awesome, I will say, but overwhelming. The beginning, I thought I'd have an idea of what I was going to do, like go in there and quick run to the back area, like, because I figured everyone would get stuck in the front area. And then I ended up in the corporate booths, and I'm like, this is a nightmare. I don't want to see these corporate booths. I want to see the cards at the tables. And I was super lost. That's what I remember the beginning like. And then I would say what was a great part of the experience, I had multiple friends there, and it was so nice having people that you connect with prior who know what they're doing and who are looking for cards that you're interested in too. So I was getting texts from people, hey, I found this. Is this what you're looking for? And it's just nice. And you're able to hook people up with cards. Like, that was a fun part of the experience, I remember. Another big thing I really enjoyed was just meeting people that you chat with online. And it's crazy because, again, you kind of, sometimes it's like you don't really know what the person looks like, but then you both like look at each other like, I know you, how's it going? And that sort of thing. I would say that's just the coolest part, is putting faces to names and that sort of thing. And then last year I was able to get, what was really cool was even before the show, I will say this, if you're listening, be super prepared coming in, because before the show, I got a message. I'm in a group chat for certain collectors for Peyton Manning. It's some of the people that I collect with and that sort of thing. And one of them was a dealer who goes by DeCaptain37 on Instagram, Kevin Randall. I'm sure some of you know him. And he posted in our chat, he said, 2012 Prism Gold Peyton Manning just walked up. The guy wants this amount. He won't trade, doesn't want any offers. And the price that he said was less than the last one it sold for. And if you know this set, it's like a set that, well, especially the National, you'd never think to find at a good price. But it's also a set that typically it seems like every single time it just sells for more. And I just keep thinking these cards are going to be out of my reach. They're just getting more out of my reach. It's like, whatever, I'll never get this card. The long story short, and I know I did a whole episode on this, I was able to acquire that card. And it's like just so amazing having a card you can tie to a National and know that, like, that experience got me this card. And the fact is I can enjoy this for years to come. I just really love that part of the National too. Like, you're just tying in your hobby with memories. And then, like I said, if you get a card that, like, for me, that's like top of the top, right? I mean, like, first year Prism Gold, I don't see, like, if I'm collecting Peyton Manning, I don't know why that would not be a card that I keep for as long as I'm collecting Peyton Manning. So it's just cool knowing you kind of have a card like that and leave the National with that sort of experience. Obviously, it would be disappointing if you don't get any cards, but I think just get something that you're really looking for, regardless of price point or anything like that. I think that's a fun part of the journey as well there.
That's such a great ending to that chapter of the story where you jumped on the cards ahead of national that you knew you needed for your collection and that you wanted and that you would enjoy. And then you got to national and you still got to have the chance to get something that when you look at that Manning, you'll think not back to great, this is now another slot in my PC that's been filled, but you also know where you got it, who you were with, and experience with Kevin and everything else.
Yeah.
That's terrific.
And
So
that one's exciting because I missed it the first time, and then I found it at another booth, and then I didn't have enough money, so I had to trade a bunch of cards and sell some cards elsewhere. It's a whole ordeal. I'm sure everyone has stories like that. The National is just such an experience.
100%. So since the last national, you knew that your family was going to grow. You knew that you were not going to be able to go to the 24 national, and you knew or had an idea of what the market was going to be like in the couple of months leading up to national based on your experience from last year. So how have you been preparing for this time period of now between, maybe up until national starts? If the trend holds, what have you been doing to get ready for it?
Yeah, so I'd say the biggest thing, and this is because I knew that this happened last year, I actually, funny enough, looked back. I keep a really nice, just really, I think nice, well done spreadsheet for my just collection and cards I'm purchasing and selling, just obviously for tax purposes. But then it's fun. I like the data side of it, looking back. And one thing that led to me doing what I did this year, which I'll explain in a second, was I realized actually a lot of the really great cards in my collection and the really good deals come in this first batch of the year, and then the middle batch, right, like around this time frame. Even before I was going to the national, if I just look back like 2-3 years ago, it's like most of my, I would say again, looking back, fair deals came around this time frame. So I guess I'm just saying that. So I had more evidence. It was not just last year, that it seemed to be in the past I was doing this as well without even realizing. I came into this year knowing, again, I was going to have a baby in December, which is ended up what happened there. And so I knew I'd have paternity leave for 3 months. So I really hunkered down and said, this is a time for me. I'm maybe not going to be buying a ton. I probably like to not be on my phone a ton, like to just be with, my baby, my wife, and that sort of thing. So what I did in the last, I would say, again, 5 months before this, it was a lot more actually of, I'd say, selling, not a ton of buying. I bought some really nice PC cards in January from different friends. But after that, I would say I hadn't bought anything up until maybe 2 weeks ago. I just deliberately knew, like, unless there is that card I cannot get again, just be patient, be patient. There's going to be so many come May, June, July that, again, I'm hoping to be the case that you're going to have too many options. You can't even pick the ones you want. You can't get them all. So instead of buying a card that I like, just wait for the cards I love. And like I said, even the last couple of weeks, there's just been stuff that pops up that just, maybe I've bugged someone about for a couple of years or a couple of months. And then they're like, hey, by the way, this is now available for whatever reason. And so it has actually definitely fit my plan there, because I really just wanted to, like I said, if I sold some cards, then I could save up and be ready now for this time period. Because last year it happened kind of by accident, but this year I want to be really deliberate about, if I'm going to be at home, not at the national, I sure as heck want my card, checking account in our bank to have some money so I can actually buy stuff right away and not have to say, buy something, then go sell a bunch of cards. I've already done the work. I think that's a big thing this year versus last year. Last year I bought a lot of stuff and after the fact had to sell, versus now I did it the opposite way.
It's and to see, I don't think desperation is the right word, but to see the motivation that people have to get cash heavy ahead of national. Maybe they are dealers because they'll be looking to buy from people trying to sell at the national, or maybe just like us, they are aware of what is coming here in the next several weeks. A card I had hoped to pop up in a reasonable price range actually did about 3 days ago, and it was in someone's story sale, and then it appeared on eBay, and then the same card appeared on My Slabs, and you realize just how motivated some people are. I would say you, in the last couple of weeks, your Instagram seems to have picked up activity as well. You mentioned Drake got that amazing Peyton, and there's this trickle down effect. In your preparation for this period, you said you were moving some cards as well. Was that through platforms? Was that just through relationships you have built? How did you plan for that part of it, the preparation side of getting yourself the funds that you need when something pops up?
Yeah, a big thing with it is so for me, just for context as well, I do a lot of buying and selling on eBay, but what you see on Instagram, I run strictly from just I enjoy as a collector perspective. So it's I never, if you follow me, I'm never really posting story sales. I'm never linking to like my eBay, anything like that. I just like split it up almost into like two different silos that I kind of dwell in. So if a card enters my PC box, it's a really big deal when I sell it. To me, like it's like a like you're getting your paycheck, you're putting some money in the savings account or your investments, like that's staying there. So for me, what I did this year was pretty deliberate of looking through that again card PC box and saying, all right, what do I have here? Let's say I trim the bottom 10% of cards that I like the least, or they don't connect to a set I have, or I've had them for a while, got my enjoyment out of it. I've seen maybe multiple pop-up since, so I can replace this one if I ever needed to. So I got together like maybe 15, 20 cards. Like for instance, I'll just give context. Like for Peyton Manning, I have his Topps Finest Gold Refractor, the whole run. So all I think 16, 17 years in high grade that I wasn't touching, but I had a couple random Topps Chrome years in high grade that they're really cool cards, but I haven't been, let's say, buying the other years when they pop up. I've just been passing on them. So to me, that tells me I'm probably not going to complete this. I don't have an interest in it. So maybe those are cards I can go sell. So a lot of what I did was I actually, different than a lot of people, I sell buy it now on eBay. It's just I feel like I've gotten the best prices, and then a lot of time people reach out to you on Instagram and want it that way, and you can save some fees. I don't auction a ton, so I didn't really do that here in this case. But what I did was a lot of eBay selling, and then I also reach out to people. So a lot of times, like you kind of hinted at there, you'll make relationships, and I know, like for instance, if I have 8 Kurt Warner cards and there's 1 or 2 I want to sell now, I know 2 or 3 people that I would reach out to first, just as a courtesy, say, hey, I was looking to sell this, and then before I put it on anywhere else. And then it's just nice you can get a card like that clearly mattered something to you because it was in your personal collection box, and then now it goes to a collection that probably is a very good fit. So that's kind of the way I've been doing it. Again, I don't sell every single card because I'm not auctioning all of them. Some will probably still sit on my eBay for months, but then again, if I sell it later in the year, I know again I can go buy a card I like more. So I'm always trying to stay ahead of it. I never want to get in a panic mode, like you said, desperation, where it's like, crap, I just bought something for more than I wanted to spend at this time, and now I have to go randomly go dig through my box with a little bit of desperation. And I don't like that, because I think after the fact you end up kind of thinking, crap, I didn't really want to sell that. I just maybe was a little desperate, and then you go try to find another one. It kind of defeats the purpose, I think, because you weren't able to be as deliberate as you wanted to.
So one quick detour before we get back around to this year, and then we'll bid you farewell for now.
Sure.
Couple questions to follow up on how you sell over eBay. Number one, with your buy it nows, do you accept offers? And number two, do you keep your funds in those spendable funds, or do you then bring them back to your account so you can go potentially, if you have to, off eBay to grab something that you want?
Yeah, these are great questions. I feel like no one ever talks about this thing, but I think there's such a science to eBay selling. Yeah, I definitely do offers. I swear by the fact, if you listed a card at 500, or like let's just say $100 buy it now, or you did like 129 with best offer, you're gonna sell for it. Like you'd be pleasantly surprised. I think you'd sell it for 100. The 129 you'd sell for $100 immediately sometimes, and the $100 buy it now will just sit and sit and sit. And I know that's how I think when I buy. Right? I think if I see a card that pops up, buy it now at a price I like. If it's when I really need, I'll buy it. But if it's like something that's borderline, I'm always questioning like, I wish I could send an offer here. Like, you know what I mean? It's just, even though the price might make sense, you still want to feel like you're getting a deal. So I swear by that. And then what was the other part of it? Sorry, I forgot the other question.
Oh, do you leave your funds in spendable funds, or do you bring them back out?
Yeah. So what I do, and I would highly recommend this if you're, pretty serious about growing collection and keeping your funds in a organized sense. Like I mentioned, that's a big deal to me. Just with having a baby, especially now my wife's no longer working, I never want to be spending my full-time job money on this unless I'm being deliberate about it, right? I don't want to accidentally just be buying from the same account. So I'd recommend what I do is I have a separate checking account with our bank, and I tie my eBay to that. So if I sell, 5 cards on eBay, all the money funnels into there. So I have it. So I will say, I guess I do take it out of eBay, but it's sitting there. And to me, that's my card fund money that I have, pretty clear with my wife, that she knows what I've spent at the beginning. Now this is kind of what my collection is. If I want to buy more, I have to sell something. So that's where it kind of keeps it a net zero, I guess you would call it. And hopefully, again, it's kind of fun because sometimes, you're maybe buying and selling stuff and you're doing well with it, that you can end up buying larger cards at certain points versus, again, I'd love to say I could just, work and then pull my paycheck money in all the time. Doesn't work like that. Occasionally if life's going well, I obviously splurge on a nice card with that kind of money, but I make myself do the work. It takes some time. I know not everyone has that time, but I like the listing. I like the selling. I like the shipping. It's just very methodical to me. And again, it's kind of fun running your own business of sorts. I just really enjoy that side of things. I feel like I've learned a lot of good skills through it. I set up at card shows too occasionally, but it's been a lot less since the baby. So I'm setting up this Saturday for the first time in a few months. Looking forward to that. But I don't do particularly well at card shows, to be honest. I don't really, what do you say, like cater my inventory to what's hot or like the modern guys. I kind of just bring stuff that I like, which you get good connections that way. But it's more so for me to get out of the house and have some fun. Usually that's the way I look at it.
That's terrific. Last question. Over these next 4, 6, 8 weeks, you've built your spreadsheets. You have the list of what you want, what you're looking for. What's going to give you the green light when the card pops up and you need it? For you, for Austin, when is it full speed ahead? I'm going to pursue this card.
I think for me, it's what the number one factor to me is, have I seen this one before? Have I had another opportunity? When will I have the next chance? Like there's certain cards I know, like they're an immediate green light if they simply pop up. There's nothing else. I mean, unless the price is especially in an auction format, but if the price is obscene, then okay, maybe question it. But to me, it's how often can I find, how reasonable is it for me to find this one? That always determines my green light. If the answer is it's unlikely or extremely hard, where 4 of the 10 are already, good luck at getting the other ones. That's usually to me the green light immediately. And then otherwise I just kind of are more methodical about it.
Well, Austin, this has been enlightening for me and hopefully enjoyable for the listeners. Thank you. Congratulations on your family, first and foremost. Congratulations on building a really amazing collection and letting us follow along and watch it. And thanks for your time today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dave. Love what you do. This was a ton of fun. Thanks so much.